You know, the topic is Florida newsrooms, but frankly, newsrooms are pretty much the same everywhere in the way they're confronting radical change. And so I'm going to talk, some local about what we're doing, but also sort of about the broader media scene as someone in what's known as the mainstream media, I guess the war horse, the dinosaur, whatever, sees it. I've been in the business, for about 37, 38 years, and I've seen tremendous change, incredible change. I worked for an afternoon newspaper when I first started. They are no more. They all died. Did newspapers die because afternoon newspapers died? No. I put the paper to bed at 4 a.m. in the morning in what's called hot type. No one even knows what that is anymore. We used to have linotype operators who sat there pushing little keys that made lead come out, and that formed the plates that that made. I remember cutting stories, what they called on the board. In other words, going downstairs to the composing room and reading the type upside down and backwards and throwing pieces of lead out in order to make the stories fit on the page. So it's now, what's my day like? It's very digital. It's very digital, but we also put out a print newspaper. And we now see ourselves as a news provider on whatever platform you want to get the news on, whether it's your laptop, whether it's your mobile device, whether it's print, we'll do it for you. And that's the transformation we're undergoing. You know, there's a big myth abroad in the country that newspapers are dying and that mainstream media are dying. Okay, 2 or 3 newspapers died this year. 2 of them were in competitive markets where they were the second of 2 newspapers. It's true, markets no longer can support 2 newspapers. Number 2, our circulation is shrinking. Yes, it is, but our web audience is growing exponentially. Our web audience increased, our local web audience, and that's what really matters to us because we're local media, increased by, about 15% last year. So overall, we're now reaching more people every week than we ever reached before. And that's numbers about 1.3 million. We're not dying. People want what we have. We are transitioning, that's actually way too mild a word for what's going on out there. And we are revolutionizing ourselves into a whole different kind of newsroom. Now, that has a lot of implications for young people studying journalism. How many of you all are studying journalism out there? Okay, and how many of you want to be actually working journalists? A lot. And you see, I'm very, very heartened by that. I say, yay, good for you. Go for it. Because you all are going to invent the new journalism. My generation is passing away. We have seen through a tremendous revolution. It's been very painful, and it continues to have its pain. But you all are going to be in on the exciting part. You're going to be in on inventing the new media. And believe me, this is just beginning. Everyone thinks, oh, we're in the middle of this information age, and it is so fluid. Every day there is something new. I mean, yesterday it was Apple now going to put out this reader device. Yesterday it was the New York Times saying that it has decided to charge, at least in part, for heavy use of its website. That's where we're all at. We're inventing this. And you all are going to be part of that. So I urge you to stick with it. It's not going to be easy, and you're going to have to be a lot different, a lot smarter, and a lot quicker than my generation when we started in the news business, where pretty much things had been done the same for, God knows, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. The 20th century American newspaper was a fixture in its community, and it's what we now refer to as mass media, meaning almost everybody read the newspaper. There was a time when like 70% of people read the print newspaper. I almost don't want to know what it is now, but I bet most of you don't read a print newspaper. But I hope you seek out your news on reputable news sites that actually verify things before they report them and aren't opinion and aren't like gossip. That's what we still bring. I mean, journalism at its most basic is the verification of facts. And so much of what I see right now out there is just sheer opinion, sort of people picking up other newspapers paper stories and spinning them in their way. There was this interesting study that I read about 2 weeks ago about a study in Baltimore of the news media and where stories actually come from. Because nowadays a story gets out there on the web, in the virtual world, and it just sort of like transmogrifies and it's all viral. Everything goes around really fast. Well, the majority of those stories had originated in either daily newspapers or specialty newspaper products. Most of the reporting, the real reporting that is still going on, is being done in newspaper newsrooms. No one else is covering the school board. No one else is covering City Hall. No one else is covering the politicians. No one else is being a watchdog for society. So that's not going to go away. And when you look at newspapers now, and you look at the media in general, everything has to be free. We live in an age where we think information is free. Now, it isn't really free, because you pay a heck of a lot for that iPhone bill every month. The delivery method isn't free, but we somehow think the content is free. Well, I will tell you that good journalism is expensive. It means you have to be trained. It means you have to spend time verifying things. It means you have to go out to the scene and actually talk to people before you write something. It means that you have to have it edited. There are people that are paid a good deal of money, well, not enough, of course, to correct, and make sure we get it right after we write it. So journalism is expensive. It's not free, and yet in the web world, in the virtual world, we want everything to be free. Remember, we wanted music to be free. And finally, if we had all music free, there wouldn't be any new music created anymore, because there wouldn't be a business model for it. So journalism today is searching for its business model. And it's going to be a different business model than in the past. Because when you look at what's happening out there in the media landscape, basically advertising has collapsed. I read a very interesting story in Ad Age about maybe 4 months ago, and it was by an expert on advertising who said, people are really missing the true story. When they're talking about newspapers dying, they really should be talking about advertising changing totally and dying in its traditional sense. And it's affecting every single media that depends on advertising. Television, networks are doing horrible. Advertising's awful. Websites that depend on advertising, doing horrible. It was an awful year. But I will tell you this, I think we've passed through the worst of it. I think 2009, I hope, knock on wood, was the worst of it. The double whammy of recession and what we call structural change in our industry, meaning people going to the web for information, advertising sort of disappearing. When I was a young journalist, the way you told a profitable paper was by how many classified advertisements it had. That was our most profitable business. So if you went into a city and looked at his paper, you could sort of tell how rich it was by how thick the classified ads are. The web has ended all of that. The publisher I had when I first came, Kathy Walsh, who isn't here anymore, said one day to her top lieutenants, her director said, in 5 to 10 years, there will be no print classified. And the recession has clearly accelerated that. So that's been a huge strain on newsrooms. So yes, we are a smaller newsroom. My newsroom is probably about half of the size it was when I arrived. And as I talk to editors across the country, that's true in every market I talk to. It's not unique to Florida. Florida is, in some ways, done better because the newspapers were stronger going into the recession. But does that mean we're going to stop covering the news, that we're not going to innovate? No, the exact opposite. We've had to innovate tremendously. And at the same time as we've been trimming our newsroom, we have transformed the whole structure. Every reporter and every editor in my newsroom is now also a digital reporter and editor. And so they're doing, have you ever heard the expression SEO, search engine optimization? That's how you get your Google juice to get up in Google. The editors do that at night. The reporters do it. You do it by all sorts of tagging and keywords and all this stuff. Social media. We're all, pretty much on Twitter and Facebook, and it's seen as a absolutely crucial part of our journalism now. So we are all digital journalists, and I would tell you, as young aspiring journalists, be flexible, learn everything, don't give up, and learn how to report and learn how to write and learn how to be curious about the world around you, because journalism is not about you, it's about the world around you. And it will excite you, it will thrill you, you're in for the ride of your life. I mean, it's been tough. I had a paper fold on me. I worked at one of those evening papers that folded in 1981. I was out of a job. So it won't always be easy, but I will tell you, I have never regretted for a minute being a journalist. I'm in the middle of all the most important stories, and I think we serve our community. I mean, that's what we're really all about. And all the cuts we've made, everything we've done, the thing I have tried to preserve the most is our watchdog role and our ability to mind the store, to tell people what their public officials are up to, how they're spending money, what matters to this community. And so go for it. Go for journalism. And good luck, because you're going to need it, but you're going to need smarts and entrepreneurial spirit. And I wish you well. And with that, I think I'm probably supposed to turn it over. Oh, I'm supposed to come up here.
Good afternoon, and I bring you greetings from the dark side. I work in public relations, and those on the journalism side consider it the dark side. I would like to say I saw the light and went over to public relations. And Charlotte and I are friends, so she's okay with some of the things I might say. I've had the good fortune in my career to have worked on both sides of the aisle. I spent nearly 15 years working as a print journalist, beginning as a police beat reporter at the Orlando Sentinel. I had my first newspaper story published when I was 9 years old in the Orlando Sentinel. I'm a native. I love the smell of a press room. I love the feel of a newspaper. I am most comfortable when I'm with journalists. In fact, some of my best friends are journalists. I am a newspaper girl through and through, and that will never change. Ultimately, however, I transitioned to public affairs and corporate communications, developing a specialty in reputation management and crisis communications. So I think it's fair to say that my professional experiences have provided me with a unique and valid perspective about the changes in news, how it's covered and reported. I was asked to speak today about my role at Bright House Networks, a position where I was the Vice President of Public Affairs and Community Relations, and I just resigned December 31st. So the information hasn't changed, I'm just not there any longer. Having worked as a print reporter for a number of years, I heard my share of comments from PR flacks who accused me of all sorts of inaccuracies, biases, and an inability to understand the issues or the real story. And I admit that when I entered the dark side, I too began making those claims in my dealings with a few reporters, not everybody. When I was asked to speak today about my role and experience with Bright House, I wanted to make it relevant to these issues and the transition to journalism. But when I came to Bright House, I came during a crisis. I was working for a public relations firm based in Miami. I ran the Central Florida division. The hurricanes of 2004 were nothing short of remarkable, and certainly the media coverage was epic. Historically, Bright House did not have an outstanding relationship with the local news media, and I was hired to improve the communications and make the newspaper understand that the company was indeed prepared for the storms and was doing everything necessary to restore service. That message needed to be communicated to customers. It also needed to be communicated to some of the reporters who were struggling with their own service issues. We were able to turn the story around in a matter of days, and the reporters from the Orlando Sentinel in particular thanked me for just taking the time and talking to them. That's really all I did, was update them and explain to them where the company was, where it had been, and where it was going. Ultimately, the president of Bright House invited me to join his team with the goals of improving media relations and community outreach on behalf of the business. The company's interests were and still remain all about providing good customer service, but also having a meaningful relationship in the betterment of Central Florida's overall health. My task was to find ways for the news media to understand the company's business as a whole, to be receptive to stories about new technologies and products, as well as the company's community involvement, but also to acquire balanced coverage, most especially in negative stories such as rate adjustments, or controversial programming negotiations. I'm not sure, are any of you familiar with the Fox issue that just happened at the end of the month for Fox Sports? That would be one of the controversies. At the same time, the national news media and the local market began changing dramatically with budget cuts, diminished news holes, certainly making it more difficult for acquiring positive news placements. Websites were coming into vogue, becoming much more aggressive and much more heavily used by all of the news outlets. The websites have contributed to the speed, moving news much faster than ever before. Meanwhile, just as Charlotte just mentioned, another outcome of the changing media market for broadcasters and programmers were revenues, advertising. It's changed for everyone. It has triggered a plethora of major industry renegotiation issues that attracted huge local media interest and ultimately national and trade interest. From retransmission issues with the local CBS affiliate WKMG 2 years ago to Fox Sports Florida and the carriage of the Orlando Magic games 2 years ago, as well as other negotiation concerns the media never became aware of. My days and nights have been filled with balancing the provision of good information, the information that reporters wanted, what we wanted reporters to report, and protecting the quality of the negotiations from public pressure. In other words, not negotiating our story in the press. In my time at Bright House, I've handled a variety of issues ranging from an employee being charged with murder, rate adjustments, and the unconscionable removal of Dora the Explorer and SpongeBob from the channel lineup, which was probably one of the most controversial issues I've ever experienced. As a former member of the news media, working with local reporters wasn't difficult for me, but I had minimal experience with sports writers, and they are indeed a different breed. The Orlando Magic carriage issue became personal for everyone, but most especially with some of the sports writers who simply wanted us to make magic and carry the magic no matter what. I've been yelled at, cussed at, argued with, and threatened by a variety of sports writers. I enjoyed a lot of it. When the national Viacom issue extended past New Year's Eve at the start of 2009, I, along with about 40 other colleagues from Bright House and Time Warner across the country, were on the phone all night getting updates about the negotiations. In between, I was speaking to reporters calling me from all of the TV stations over and over and over and over again. Literally, within 10 minutes, if they hadn't heard anything, they were calling back. I guess everybody just wanted to justify their missing ringing in the new year with champagne. At the same time, writers were posting blog items about no update, nothing to report, nothing's new. All night, went on till about 4 in the morning. I'm also accustomed to reporters calling me at 3 in the morning when they come home from work and their internet is out, and instead of checking or calling the call center or checking to see if their system's plugged in, they would call me to find out if there was an outage. So here are a few things that I've learned in all this. This is a little of what I know to be true. As a free society, we must always have an active, vigorous, and engaged news media, but one that views its own influence responsibly and realistically. There are not always two sides to every story. Sometimes there are more. Not everything is black and white. Shades of gray are real, and with new pressures in every newsroom, shades of gray can complicate accurate reporting. But the gray still matters in the reporting and storytelling. Newsroom budgets and staff cuts and the speed of technology have affected the most vital element of journalism, getting it right. The basic and sometimes tedious task of fact-checking has been injured. Changing reader habits, budget, and staff cuts have contributed to reporters' own anxieties about their futures and their jobs. And if you think that doesn't impact the way a story is covered by a reporter, you're mistaken. They're human, just like everybody else. Smaller news holes, severely overworked staffs, and significantly less time to focus on in-depth coverage has impacted everyone. Meanwhile, bloggers who were once considered irrelevant and silly are gaining in credibility and visibility. Those of us on the other side, that'd be the dark side, are the ones who provide information. We have to be more strategic, more efficient, and we have to be epidermally blessed as we tangle with reporters and their own frustrations and the frustrations we cause for them. The external issues are pushing things faster than ever. They're affecting everyone. Someone like me has a role that gets more and more difficult all the time, having to tell your boss that he's more vulnerable, not to say this, don't do that, we can't do this, so that we don't attract attention from bloggers. We have angry constituents, customers, and employees. Everything that's said any move you make has impact. And everyone has a computer and a modem, and anyone can get the attention of the news media on just about any day. Communications officers such as me must be vigilant and prepared for every imaginable scenario, even the smallest issues, because just about anything can attract the attention of the media. It's our job to navigate through that, truthfully, accurately, and appropriately. Finding ways to speak directly to constituents rather than relying solely on the news media is what we do now. It's a key responsibility, and it requires a whole new set of protocols. My specialty, reputation management and crisis communications, is bigger than ever because of today's changing newsrooms. From a local perspective, Central Florida's media market is like others in the country. It's changed dramatically. There's less space, there's less opportunity to pitch a positive story. While a story about Bright House rate adjustments can make the front page, remember that one, Farah? The company's distribution of millions of dollars to this community doesn't have a chance of seeing the light of day. Both impact residents in this community. The cable provider is different than many other businesses. By virtue of its intimate relationship with customers, with TV and the internet and telephone, we're in everybody's homes in multiple rooms, and much of the services are running at all times. It would seem that just about everything a cable provider, Bright House, does carries some kind of media potential. From retransmission agreements, to the recent Fox deal, to cable techs being accused of stealing something from a customer, to a customer having a billing issue that they would take to a consumer reporter. I'm not saying they're invalid, I'm not saying they're incorrect. It's just what we deal with. My experience in the cable industry was eye-opening from a variety of levels, beginning with the big business of programmers to the intensity of local sports writers and their philosophy that there can never be enough NFL football on TV. For instance, during the Viacom controversy, Viacom very deliberately opted to make the issue public. The media giant placed full-page ads in the Sentinel and other papers across the country asking why Dora was crying, why SpongeBob was wigged out. It was an emotional appeal that part of their effort in their efforts to negotiate a new agreement under the threat that Dora would suddenly be ripped from children's hearts. Parents called me in a panic, begging for us to resolve the issue. All local media covered these ads, just as Viacom anticipated and desired. And certainly, I knew that if I publicly accused Viacom of using children as pawns in a business negotiation, that would get carried too, and it did. It's kind of a game. In this media market, it's more difficult than ever to snare a positive story. The Sentinel, the Orlando Business Journal, and the TV stations just don't have the manpower or the time to cover some of the positive stories. Meanwhile, community newspapers like the Orlando Times, La Prensa, and the Sanford Herald, and even UCF's publications and Rollins publications are providing new opportunities for someone like me. It's a strategic effort that is designed to take us around the news media or to find new media opportunities, new venues, and speak directly to a smaller audience. We also use the website and blogging and Twitter more effectively and more strategically. And again, it is an effort to speak directly to our constituents. We just want balanced coverage, and we want to get our position out. That holds true for my clients as well. Some of my former cable executives who have been bruised a time or two by news accounts of their activities have stated that the newspaper is irrelevant. Not true. When you're the person on the front page of the lead story, it becomes pretty relevant. I agree with Charlotte. I don't think newspapers are dying. I think they're changing. They're in transition. And I hope to God that they continue. As I said, I'm a newspaper girl through and through. That's where my heart is. I hope that the new business model is discovered. I hope it comes soon. I think it's vital to the health of every community in this country that the newspapers exist and continue to function as our watchdog. But I also hope that everybody can take a breath and focus on what's really important and focus on getting it right as much as they focus on getting it first.
Good afternoon to everybody. My name is Ruben Funes. I am the editor of the La Prensa weekly Spanish newspaper in Central Florida. For those who don't know what is La Prensa, it has been in the market for 28 years already. It started like a family business until 4 years ago that it was acquired by a national chain of newspapers known as Imprimedia, which had publications in Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, San Francisco, Houston, and now they have us here, which brought a lot of changes for us because we used to be a very community-oriented, let's say, we have a wide focus on everything, and now we have all these resources from a national chain, which makes life better for us as journalists, and also there's a lot of more work than it was before. As you know, La Prensa is really a community newspaper. Has been for 28 years and always focused on the Hispanic community here in Orlando and the whole Central Florida area. Now, we haven't changed that. We have more resources, more national news, more analysis and all that. But our focus remains in the Hispanic community here, which has grown a lot in all these years, especially in, let's say, in the last 10, 15 years. And I see we grow with them, and we would like to continue growing with them. Facing the same challenges that they are facing growing in this region. For them, the region is a new country. We always have been trying to help them in the basic needs of the daily life, not only with news. It's not about service information. A lot of them don't know how to get a driver's license, how to get the social security number, or whatever all the needs they have. And they come to La Prensa. And always, our focus is always there, helping people first. And sometimes the news take a second, not as important as in the daily news, as important as helping people to find their way around this region or new country. As you know, the Hispanic community in the country in this world now is over 45 million people, which is, for all the Hispanic or Spanish-speaking countries in the world, we are number 3. We are the 3rd. And Hispanics also in the United States is about 600, 700 billion economy, which is also the 3rd in the world, talking about Spanish-speaking countries. So there's a lot of market for us there nationally, and this national chain, Imprimedia, is trying to take advantage of that, and at the same time to provide, let's say, journalism or content journalism that this publication didn't have before, because now we have so many resources. But always the focus has been helping the Hispanic community. Never, let's say, never has been a say that, oh, you had to do whatever we say you got to do from up there, whatever it is, the corporate headquarters. Always has been, you are there, you are in Orlando, you are in Houston, you know what to do, you know what people want. So do your thing, help your community. And this has been our focus, and I think it will continue. I have to tell you that the last couple of years has been very challenging for the whole industry. especially for us as being a downturn in advertising, a lot. Pages were lost, jobs were lost. And now we had to face in this, besides the economic downturn, this produced a lot of change in the industry. And I heard before talking about Twitter, Facebook, videos, and all that. So according to that and the downturn in revenue, we have been trying to adjust for the last, let's say, a little bit less than 2 years. So we have been changing our focus from the print edition to the new technologies. So suddenly we have the resources of the web. We have a website, we have a national website, we have our newspaper website. So what we do with that? So the website becomes our daily newspaper. What happened today is going to be there. Maybe it's not going to go to the print edition, but it's going to be there in the web. And thus, it changed the whole thing inside the newsroom. Okay, besides, we'll see it there and see what happened this week, what is the best, what we can cover. We have a whole week for that. Now we don't have a whole week for that anymore. We can suddenly, okay, well, we have a weekly print edition, but now we have to take care of our everyday news. And that's what we do, and that's what we're trying to do. Then we have to face that. We have Facebook, which I guess all of you use a lot. We have Twitter. And our last step is going to the videos. And then we have the print edition. So that has been a lot. Challenging is not the right word, it's more than that. But this has taken us to think about the print edition. So we know that print edition is going to be there for years to come. We don't know how many pages it will have, or exactly what's going to be the content, but it's going to be there. Probably most analysis-oriented, more community-oriented, people sending on stories, what is called citizen journalism. Maybe we have more of that. We're still working on that. We don't know what's going to happen with that, but seems to be the trend. Excuse me the silence, I didn't prepare for this. A lot of this change has been very hard on the employee, on the reporters, photographers, and all that, because they had to be retrained. And I think that we know that not everybody likes to be retrained because they feel they already know what they do and don't like to be retrained. And start with this new technology, which requires a lot of computer expertise that they may have or may not have. And this and that in some points have been painful, but most of them adapted to this. And in some way, those who stay are looking at the future from the bright side. Okay, we have these new technologies. Okay, we'll learn how to use it, and we'll go ahead. We'll do what we know with that. What is going to be what we do with that? First, it's going to be having the community more involved in the newspaper. And one of the reasons is that now we have this technology which people can reach you instantly. And whoever of them have some talent or some information or really knows what a news story is, they can deliver it to you, which before it didn't happen. There was a lot of red tape there. Now it's kind of direct communication. So one of the first avenues we're going to try to go to is have more community involvement in the newspaper. It means using the web, which has all the space you need, and some of them will go to the print edition. As I said before, this will take us to this new, completely new, what do you call I would call it a news protocol that where the emphasis was in the print edition, now completely changed the same. Speaking for myself, I welcome it. I think it's a good addition, not to be afraid of, even if you have as many as I have. So whoever you are thinking about going to this career or journalism, that's what expecting to you, and I hope you will find yourself in a good disposition to go to it, because there is not a lot of money around and a lot of people wanting to get in. But there is a bright future for those who want to take risk and serve, because in the end you are serving your readership, you are serving your community, and in this job all is not money, but it's the satisfaction to be serving and to be needed. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ruben. We're going to have time now for some question and answers, and I'd like to offer the panel the first question, if I may, kind of dovetailing off what Ruben said at the end, that the future of journalism belongs to risk takers, and I would say to major in journalism is to be a risk taker in this present environment. The Grady School of Journalism up at the University of Georgia every year publishes extensive research on the hiring practices of news media organizations, especially as they pertain to that year's journalism graduates. And in 2009, the Grady School, in their research nationally, found that it was the worst job market in 25 years for journalism, that 60% of journalism majors from last year were working in journalism within 6 months. That's 60%, or 6 out of 10. That means that 40% were either working out of the field, had moved on to grad school, or were unemployed. So my first question would be to our panel, what can these students do who are majoring in journalism? What can they do to position themselves so that they are in that 60% who obtain employment and find jobs in the field that they're majoring in, and not end up among the other end, the 40% who do not?
You got to find your way. I would say that internships is the best way to start. Ask for it, look for it. I mean, the newsroom never is like the school. It applies to every other profession. You really have to go into a newsroom, feel the way it works. Probably they will decide if you want to continue from there. But I say looking for internship or blogging or asking for pieces to be published either on the web or the print edition, look for it. There's always opportunities and windows, and like Charlotte said before, try to learn all the aspects of the new technologies that are being used in journalism nowadays.
What do you do to combat the danger of having clicks and page counts going up for stories that don't matter? And suddenly you're getting more of an entertainment-oriented journalism, and it's devaluing the stuff that you're talking about being the most important.
That's a really great question, because we all live with it. For one thing, you're absolutely right. We watch the traffic on the web very, very closely, and we program our homepage by what's popular. And in almost every website you go on, and the New York Times is one of them too, you'll see a little rail that says most visitors and most emailed. And those sort of tell you what people are interested in that day. And it varies. I mean, if you go on the New York Times, it's like not lightweight stuff. It's their columnists, and it's some of their really heavyweight stuff. So it depends a lot on your market and who's reading you. I mean, I will tell you, at the Sentinel, sports and crime do very, very well. We have a very popular sports section, and that's what people are interested in. We don't play it on the homepage. It has its own area in the website. And so, and we found out, interestingly, in sports, what are people most interested in? They were interested in three things. They were interested in college football, including UCF. They were interested in high schools, okay, and they were interested in the Magic. And I think that's actually good for us to know that, because as we've had to reduce resources, we have honed our sports department in those three areas. And we don't cover as many things as we once did, and that's too bad. I regret it. But I also know that the ultimate group that controls the web is the user. And how do you continue to do the sort of public service journalism, meanwhile, that might not get a lot of page views? Well, you hope your organization is committed to it. You also edit your paper differently than you edit your website. Very, very differently. And there are different products, news products. I hate to use that word, but I don't even think we should be called a newspaper anymore. I don't know what to call us, because we're paper, but we're not paper, and blah blah. So I don't know what to call it. But anyway, you edit your newspaper very differently than you edit your website, because the newspaper is for a different audience. The newspaper audience is older, better educated, been in the community longer, brings to the paper expectations of what they expect out of paper, and it's very different than the web. So we're doing both things. We're editing the paper in probably what you might call a more traditional way in terms of the play of stories than we are the website. And to me, that's okay. I mean, we're at a phase in media where you deliver what people want in the media on the platform that they want it. And it isn't that the serious stuff isn't on the website. It is. It's all there. And sometimes it does very, very well. I mean, big corruption stories do very well. So, but we also don't play those crime stories very big in the paper, a lot of them, that might get a lot of traffic online. So you edit for your audience, and the two audiences are different. And that's why, obviously, print is going to survive. I think that's absolutely true, and it will have a different audience. It may become a smaller, more elite audience as time goes by, but it will still be there. The public service journalism will be there.
If your websites currently use games, or if you're planning on implementing that, and what your advice would be for journalism students?
I will tell you, at Bright House, we have a staff of gamers, and because gaming is gaining in its audience and usage, Bright House has a team of game designers, and there's a game area on the company's website. And when the Orlando Science Center has its Atronicon conference every year, which attracts a few thousand individuals from around the world, we're actively involved in that. As an information or a kind of a news format, I know that there has been discussion on the side of the web designers at Bright House for the Bright House site to see if there are ways to use it on behalf of, certainly, we are a product, and they, since I'm not there anymore, but the products and services.
We have done a couple of games, I think, but mainly in sports. We did a Tiger Wood game, as I recall. Sort of well, okay, it was sort of a game. But we haven't done it on the sort of like the government side of reporting. And I don't really know enough about it to know whether it would be applicable. I mean, if that's the best way to tell stories, I'll do anything if it's a good way to tell a story.
Matt Sokoloff, who's in the marketing department at the Sentinel, a while back showed me a game that his department was developing, but it was more on the advertising side. To do things like product placement and things with as a vehicle for selling advertising to help fund the website. But
with information being transmitted and published at record speeds, what kind of things do you do to maintain on the web specifically a sense of accuracy and a sense of integrity?
We have the same standards online for reporting something that we do in the paper, meaning you don't report unconfirmed information. If there's a police story, say a murder or something, you don't report rumor that people are calling into you. You have the same sorts of level of verification. That said, we don't have as much editing on the web, and some breaking news stories, basically the short sort of police stories, go onto the web without an editor reading them, meaning a reporter writes them. So that means the pressure is really on the reporter to be accurate and also, frankly, not to have typos in his or her story, which we all play that game sometime. In that sense, I think some sloppiness gets online for us that we hope doesn't get in the paper, but the standards of verification are the same, and I think that's why actually it's important to have trained journalists doing the reporting as opposed to reporting what people call and tell you, or the idea that we're all journalists. I don't really believe that. The democratization of there is a vast democratization of media, but that's not the same as journalism.
Can I add to that? Because I can take, I don't want it to sound like my remarks imply that the accuracy is a huge issue, but when you're in the position of a business or being the entity, the subject in the story, when you've dealt with the reporter and given them the information as best you can, and that means by as much as you can for what you can or can't talk about, when it's put on the website, that's where that speed issue comes in, because they've got to get it up on the web. Everybody's all about getting it first, which is just innate to journalism. But what happens is we're watching it. We're constantly looking at the website to see when the story posts. And the Sentinel has some really, really good reporters. Hal Bodeker is one of them. Hal Bodeker doesn't post anything until he is 100% certain that he has checked everything. There is information you can give him, and he will not run it, even though we know it's correct. But when it's wrong, and we feel the impact from that, and that's why it's so important to us with this new dynamic of communicating, because the business gets impacted, the employees get impacted. There is a large an ongoing ripple effect that impacts everybody from the business standpoint. And the newspaper is a business. UCF is a business. Everything really that has a structure and employees is, in a sense, a business. And so it is important for somebody in my role to make sure that the reporters are getting it right and not posting it before they've checked it. But that is the one downfall, really, is they're working so fast. And I've had it with virtually every newspaper that we've dealt with, that at one time or another it's gone up, and it might be just a shade off or whatever, and then it's getting it corrected, but it's already up on the site. It's how the newspapers and the TV channels fix it that is equally as important.
Yeah, let me just comment on fixing it, because the minute someone tells us something's wrong on the web, it gets corrected. I mean, the old policy when we were print only is you corrected it the next day. because that was your first opportunity. But nowadays, if someone calls in and says, oh, you spelled someone's name wrong or whatever, we immediately fix the story. And then if it's an error of real substance, we will say at the top, an earlier version of this story, here's a correction that, so that if you saw the earlier version, you'll know that we corrected it.
At least on La Prensa, everything that goes into the print or web is edited. So nothing goes straight as it comes, it is edited. And sometimes when I mentioned before the thing about having community involvement, people sending stories or whatever, what I didn't say that what the editors are expecting, those people contributing to the newspaper to know how to write what they're saying, and before sending, try to verify and are you sure what are you sending? Because it's not going to go to the web, it's not going to go to print. Really, we are expecting contributions, but they have to be good contributions. Have to be almost what a reporter would do.